So, apologize for the snafu there. We tried to set it up two different ways and it didn't work very well, and we've had to launch under a different link. And if you weren't able to get back on the new link, I will have this recorded and it will go out to the government channel, and we'll be able to show it through YouTube and different ways. So, we have with us Dr. Jonathan Larson with the University of Kentucky. And Dr. Larson has been asked to speak on this subject of fireflies or lightning bugs for the mountaineers, um, because of his knowledge of entomology, and also because there's been a lot of interest that has been piqued by Facebook rumors about lightning bugs going extinct, and blue lightning bugs, and that kind of thing. So, Dr. Larson, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you enlighten us. Ta-dum,
Much
ta.
obliged. I appreciate that. I love talking about fireflies or lightning bugs. Shad was alluding to before the fact that I'm a darn Yankee, and I do say fireflies occasionally. Lightning bug is the more common parlance here in the state of Kentucky, and I'll be glad to talk about some of those questions that people have about their populations, talk about the blue ones, but I'm also just going to talk about kind of what they are, where they exist in the insect natural world, and how they do the things that they do. When we talk about the name, I do think it's important and interesting just to point out that there are phrases that are different in different parts of the country when people talk about these insects. This is a map that shows the results of a poll. I think it was a Gallup poll, actually, from several years ago, just asking Americans what they refer to the glowing insect that shows up in the summer. What do they call it? And of course, a lot of lightning bug activity here in Kentucky, across Appalachia, even going up into my home state of Indiana. When I was growing up, I definitely called them lightning bugs. Firefly is more common in the West and up in New England, even up in Michigan and the Great Lakes states. Firefly is, in technically speaking, the accepted entomological term. It's the one that we use when we talk about these at scientific meetings and things of that nature. But both common names are acceptable. I also felt like this was not quite the full truth. I found a different poll and a different map that shows the results of that poll that show that there is a lot of interchangeability in some of the states that surround Kentucky, where people either use lightning bug or firefly kind of in conjunction with each other. So like over in the Carolinas, down into Florida. But if you look at this map, the blue color on the right is used to denote a lightning bug response, and Kentucky is very solidly blue, wildcat blue, a proud lightning bug state. And I love that. I think it's awesome that people use that phraseology here and talk about it in that term. And what I also love about this is that any sort of conversation that you have about lightning bug versus firefly is also kind of a flawed conversation because they are neither flies nor bugs. They are actually soft-winged beetles. So when we talk about insects, there are flies. So the true flies, like a house fly or a hover fly or a deer fly, these are all things that when we write their name, it is house space fly or horse space fly. That's how you know something is a real fly. If we use fly like dragonfly or firefly, those words are shoved together. So they're all one word. There is no space in between them. A little bit of etymological entomology for you of how we do these common names and how we draw them up. It's also true with bugs. So bugs are a specific group of insects. Bug is used sort of generically for all insects, but there are specific insects that we actually call the bugs, the stink bugs, the bed bugs, the plant bugs, things like that. And so they have a needle-like mouth part that separates them from the other insects. Flies are separated from other insects by only having two wings. But these fireflies or lightning bugs are soft-winged beetles. So they have four wings and they also have chewing mouth parts. When we talk about beetle wings, the front pair of wings are the hardened ones. If you've ever caught a June bug or a Japanese beetle or a scarab beetle or a dung beetle, you will have probably noticed that their front wings, if they open them, they're very hard, they're very crunchy feeling. They're a sheet of armor that's there to protect the soft, membranous hind wings, which we see on that scarab beetle on the left. When we talk about fireflies, they do have elytra. So their front wings are slightly hardened, but they feel more leathery in comparison to some of the other beetles, and that's why we call them the soft-winged beetles. This is just a little video that shows how these wings work. So here's a lady beetle opening those wings up. She pops it open, she unfolds her back wings, kind of origami style, and then takes flight by vibrating them and moving upward. And fireflies are capable of the same thing, and they use those front wings to protect those softer back wings. When we talk about fireflies specifically, these are beetles that are capable of bioluminescence at one point in their life cycle. That is how we denote something as a firefly. Bioluminescence means a biological capability to glow. So rather than us with our flashlights and our light bulbs and things like that that we have to manufacture, these are animals that are capable of creating their own glow. And we'll talk more about that here in a second. Fireflies are able to do that, and they have some close relatives that are also able to bioluminesce. Fireflies are closely related to two other kinds of beetles that you've probably encountered. The first one is the click beetle. Click beetles are special because, as the name implies, they do make a special click. If you put a click beetle on their back, they will flex kind of the thorax and abdomen together, and there are some parts that'll click together, and then it will sort of overpressurize it, and they'll actually pop, and then that pop will launch them up in the air, and then they can land back on their feet. In the not so distant past, there were people in communities that would use click beetles to play tiddlywinks, to play jacks. You would, instead of a rubber ball and bounce it, you would get the beetle to hop in the air, and then you would grab the jacks as it was up, sort of tumbling through the air. They can glow at one point in their life. They do not glow throughout their life, but they can sometimes glow as an adult rather than as an immature. You'll see these glowing spots kind of on the tip of the edges of the thorax. The other insect that fireflies are closely related to is a soldier beetle. Soldier beetles, like the goldenrod soldier beetle we see on the far right here, these are insects that have leathery wings. They never glow, but they do look a lot like a firefly or a lightning bug, just because they're kind of that soft beetle. And they're kind of similar colors as well. These are common on flowers. They're usually quite colorful. Soldier beetles tend to be yellow or red or kind of an exotic brown color, depending on what species you're looking at. The goldenrod soldier beetle, it loves goldenrod flowers. It hangs out on them and it will sup at the nectar and pollen, and they can be quite helpful in that way. But they look like a firefly, but they're never able to glow. So the firefly kind of merges characteristics of both of these, being softer and then being able to glow. Like other beetles, they go through complete metamorphosis. In the insect world, if something lays an egg and then the egg hatches and there is a larva that comes out, a larva will look very different from the adult version. You can see kind of a small picture of a firefly larva here on the right. I'll get up close with them here in a moment. But the firefly larva looks very different from the adult. They don't have wings. They perform very different behaviors when they're an immature. And then in order to reach adulthood, the insects that go through complete metamorphosis, they will go into a pupal stage. The pupal stage is kind of an intermediary between the larva and the adult. It can contain characteristics of both, which you can kind of see here. And then they will hatch out of this and they'll be an adult, and the adults will find each other to mate and lay eggs to create the next generation of firefly. Individual fireflies that you encounter in the summer are probably about 2 years old. It takes them some time to develop through their larval hood. And so, as that happens to be slow, they will probably be about 2 years old when they reach you as an adult. And they only live for a few weeks in the adult stage, just long enough to flash their lights, to find one another, and to mate. The eggs are usually kind of a white or light yellow color. Some of them can be orange depending on the species. They look kind of like pearls if you discover them in the areas of kind of swampy spots where they tend to lay their eggs. Females like to put these eggs in wetter areas with a lot of leaf litter. They may use kind of the cracks of tree bark. What I like about these are that they're also capable of glowing. So fireflies, depending on the species, they can glow basically their entire life. So these eggs on the right here are glowing out in the landscape. This would be very eerie, I think, if you were kind of on a hike or sort of hanging out in the woods at night, if you were to discover these tiny glowing orbs hidden in swampy areas. I think you can see how people would end up believing in fairies and strange things like that, just because it's weird to see something lighting up on its own that's so small and so immobile. But it is fascinating to me that even at this point, they're able to mix the compounds that they need to in order to glow. More importantly, are the larval stage. All larval fireflies that we see in Kentucky are going to glow in this stage. So they're able to glow on the tip of their abdomen usually. These also live in damp areas where the eggs have been laid. They are predators. They will hunt down worms and snails and slugs and consume them. They look almost like an alligator or like an ankylosaurus dinosaur. If you look at them from the top, they have kind of this armor plating. If we look on the left, you see they have this really long neck that they can kind of go-go gadget extend out from the thorax area and then reach out and grab their food or get down into a snail shell to feed on that sort of goopy snail juice down in there, very escargot-like behavior. But they use all of these things to help protect themselves to get their food. And then the glowing is something that they do as well. The one on the right here, it does not have a lightning bolt shooting out of its butt. This is a time-lapse photograph of it crawling down this branch and glowing and kind of wiggling its abdomen. So they do this with each other, kind of signaling to one another, but they don't use it for mating like they will as an adult. The pupa are found in patches of moss. They can be down in the soil or on tree bark, usually underneath something. And they're often in groups. What you see on the right there is a natural cluster of firefly pupa. So they're hanging out together, seemingly in this immobile stage. And again, they're able to glow. I find this hilarious because you can't move when you're a pupa. Your legs are not formed. You're not really able to do anything. And now you have like a giant glow on your butt that's saying, "I'm over here, please come eat me." It's very interesting to me that they do glow at this stage when they're so prone. When they pupate, this will usually happen around the period of May in Kentucky. They're usually in this pupal stage for about 1 to 3 weeks, depending on the temperature. So we had a little cooler spring this year. So they probably were in there for more like 3 weeks. And then at the end of May, they'll start to come out as an adult. And that's when we start to see the adults begin the glowing. More of them will come out in June, and then other species will come out into July. And they will each be communicating in different ways as adults. The adult is, of course, the most familiar one to most people, that sort of soft feeling beetle that has the red and yellow and black markings that we can see on leaves or on flowers occasionally. The adults, they don't really eat. They don't do a whole lot other than fly and glow and find one another. They will eat at the flowers of milkweed plants. That's what you're seeing on the right here. They will drink from those milkweed flowers and eat from those milkweed flowers, and they will actually sequester chemical compounds from the milkweed to protect themselves. If you ever held a firefly in your hand and it flew away and you're a weirdo like me, you may have sniffed your hand afterwards. There is a distinct firefly odor that's produced. I won't say the scientific name because I always butcher it, but suffice to say that there's this oil that's kind of left behind on your hand, and it contains some of these defensive compounds that they sequester from milkweed. When people think of fireflies, they think of that kind of red and black and yellow exclamation point that we see on the right. Not everybody sees them from the front or the side where you actually get to see their head. They're cuter from above for most people. When people actually see their head and see their big bug eyes, they lose some of that charm in some people's eyes. But I think that they're beautiful. I think that they're fascinating. They're just not something that's doing a whole lot at this stage other than flying around and trying to find a mate. Their illuminated posterior can vary in color depending on the genus of firefly that you're talking about. So when we talk about firefly adults, most of them will glow. Some of them are incapable of bioluminescence. The one you see on the right here, that is a winter firefly, which can be found in Kentucky. And the winter firefly actually comes out in January and February as an adult, and they are lanternless. They aren't capable of glowing. Most of the species here do have a lantern, and most of them are going to glow in the green or yellow color. There are orange ones if you go to other sort of more southwestern areas in the United States. And there are, in fact, kind of blue colored fireflies. These are often called the ghost fireflies. They're not considered to be in Kentucky. I've heard conflicting reports of that. There are some folks who say they have found really isolated populations of them in the northeastern portion of the state, if I remember correctly. But there are other people who have said that they've never existed here or that they are extinct here. So most of what you're going to see this summer and next summer, and hopefully the summer after that, will be the green or the greenish yellow colors that come out. They are famous for this glowing capability, this bioluminescence. They're not the only thing that bioluminesces. Some things do this in order to illuminate the world around them. Some use light to attract prey items. So in these two pictures on the left, we've got some fungi, which are capable of bioluminescence. There are also jellyfish that can do this. It's kind of mindless in these organisms. They're not really glowing for any distinct purpose. On the right, though, we have an anglerfish. Anglerfish are predatory deep sea fish. The female has a light at the tip of this sort of rod that comes off of her forehead, right above her nightmare mouth that we see here. And she will make that glow so that other fish will be attracted to it in the deep, dark sea. And then she gobbles them up as they get too close. They are fascinating organisms. If you ever want to read more about them, there's lots of information on the internet. I will just give you a tantalizing tidbit and say that their mating process is amongst the most unique in all of the fish. So they have a bioluminescent capability. But the fireflies, they're a little different. They're actually communicating with this. And to me, that's very different when we think about fireflies versus some of these other things. They're actually talking to one another. They're talking within a species, not to all other fireflies. They each kind of have their own glowing butt accent, for lack of a better way of saying it. The male firefly in one species will fly in the air and will send a specific pattern out. And then the female is down below in the grass, and she will send a specific code back that alerts him to her presence so that then they can mate. They don't read each other's codes for the most part, so they can't communicate across species lines. These specific flashes are there to help create the speciation. You can actually identify them with this glow. Now, this isn't as easy as it's sort of displayed here on this chart. You'll find a lot of these on Facebook or see them on books and things like that. The easiest one to identify is the flying jay. The flying jay is this kind of, or lazy dipper kind of firefly. They come out earlier in the evening, right at dusk, right when the sun is starting to set. And as they fly, they dip and go up, and they will create a glow, sometimes a shorter one, but sometimes a longer one. And when you look at it, if you follow it, it does look like somebody's writing the letter J in the sky. We have other species in the area that flash in dot sequences as they fly. So this is getting closer to dark. You'll start to see flash, flash, flash. There's some pauses in between them. We have others like Consumilus. This is kind of an SOS pattern. It's dash, 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 pause, dash, 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 pause, dash, dash, dash. We have some that create longer hyphens like calustrans. This is glow, stop, fly a little bit, glow, stop. And then the last one, Carolinus, this is the one that some people notice because it looks like somebody's playing with a flashlight, like a little tiny flashlight, because it goes flash, 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 6 times really fast, all within about a second, and then pauses and does it again. And so this is something you can look for. It's not as simple as it sometimes is presented, like I said. This is just a time-lapse video kind of showing some of these glows at the University of Kentucky South Farm here in Lexington, Kentucky. And you can see the glows as they go. Some of them are lights trailing across the screen. Some of them are the more lazy J. Some of them are faster than others. But this is all communication that's happening out in the darkness without us being fully aware of it. There is one exception to the codes that I like to point out. One of them is a femme fatale firefly. She actually knows the codes to all the other species. And so she will sit down in the grass and she'll watch above her. And if she sees a male making his specific pattern, she'll flash back his species female's pattern. And then he'll fly down and he'll be like, oh boy, about to go on a date. And then as he lands, she grabs him and eats him. And what she's doing with this is instead of going to the milkweed flowers herself, she gathers the defensive compounds from males instead of the flowers. So it's a quest for love on his part. And then he becomes literally a supplier of poison for the female so that she can protect herself. It's kind of a fascinating situation, in my opinion. The big question that we get, especially from kids, is how do they glow? How is this happening? Why are they doing, or how are they doing this? And it's a complex chemical reaction that's happening inside of the abdomen. The two key ingredients are luciferin and luciferase. So these are enzymes and things that are going to mix together and react with each other. they're also combined with a sugar molecule like ATP, some oxygen, and then all of this is happening in the abdomen in the lantern chamber. And then as the chemicals mix, the reaction kicks off and it creates the glow. And then they can control the glow by feeding or not feeding the materials that are needed into the lantern. This is a very efficient process for them. One thing I like to point out is that you hold a firefly or a lightning bug in your hand, you don't get burned, right? You don't feel any heat from this glow. That's because about 90% of the energy that they're using to produce this process, this reaction, is emitted as light, and only 10% is waste heat. This is actually the direct inverse of our traditional light bulbs. The light bulbs that Edison and everybody else worked on in the past, that we used for a very long time, they would take about 90% of the energy pumped into them and it would be generated as heat rather than the 10% that was used for light. And that's just a difference in the way that these are constructed, but they're much more efficient in the firefly world. They're better electrical engineers than we are. I love fireflies. I love talking about them. I think of them as one of the maybe four or five charismatic insects that people are willing to kind of let exist. Most people hate insects, they don't want them around, they consider them vermin, but there are some exceptions. Usually the monarchs are in that category. A lot of people will throw in mantises because they're kind of interesting. And then a great deal of people, especially here in the United States, will also include fireflies in that. And I think part of that is that they really are captivating. They captivate the human imagination every year. And I think the other part is a byproduct of the fact that they come out in summer. And then as a child, you experience this on summer vacation, and they become a very nostalgic feeling organism. They represent a time of innocence, they represent a time of freedom and fun. And for a lot of folks, they're considered kind of the bringers of summer. They show up as school is ending. They are showing up as June is setting in. And then some of them are coming out around the 4th of July. And so they're almost like natural fireworks that are popping off at the same time the United States is celebrating its independence. We're not the only people that have fireflies. They are a global group of insects. And in other countries, they have the same sort of appeal. Just one example that I like to throw out is from Japan. In Japan, fireflies are associated with romance and also with youth and also with souls. So romance and youth, I think that's again those feelings of summertime, of youthful freedom, of falling in love, maybe for the first time with a summer love. There's also this aspect with souls, though, and they have some poetry and literature that talks about the firefly being a soul escaping into heaven. You can see an old woodblock painting on the left there. I think it's a woodblock of people catching fireflies and then releasing them next to the shore here in Japan. They have a popular song pronounced Hotaru no Hikari, or the light of the firefly. It's often sang when bidding farewell to people. So as folks are leaving to go to college, as somebody's graduating from high school, as somebody's retiring, this song may be sung as sort of a see you later, farewell, we'll meet again. And it all is evocative of the fact that you catch fireflies and kind of let them go and watch them fly away. The U.S. has all kinds of cultural connotations with fireflies. I just am going to go through a few of them here. There is a minor league baseball team, the Columbia Fireflies. Tim Tebow played for them a few years ago. They have this uniform that you see, or logo that they wear on their uniform here. Not a huge fan of it, not how I would design it. They kind of are missing the red and black, I think, which are the actual colors of fireflies instead for green and yellow. It's also on fire, which goes against what I was talking about with the good chemical reaction. People have written all kinds of poems here. This is Ogden Nash on the left. Ogden Nash wrote a poem about fireflies that says, "The firefly's flame is something for which science has no name. I can think of nothing eerier than flying around with an unidentified glow on a person's posterior." So just kind of pointing out the absurdity of having a glowing butt, and what would that look like if you were a human. There are other sort of nerdier things. There's a super villain in the Batman universe named Firefly. He's actually an arsonist, so he leans into the fire part. But he also usually is depicted as having beetle-like wings so that he can fly away from the buildings that he sets on fire. There are other ones that are called other villains called LightningBug that use electrical powers. So they're across the entire spectrum. People use them for all different kinds of things. But as I've alluded to before, I think the major themes that we see pop up with them are nostalgia, loss, and then innocence. People think of a different time in their life when they think of fireflies. And I like this poem. I think it evokes that very well. This is Firefly by Jacqueline Woodson. I accessed this on poetry.com. It's almost May, and yesterday I saw a firefly. You don't see them a lot in the city. Sometimes in the dark, sometimes in the park, in the near dark, one comes out. You'll hear a little kid shout, "Lightning bug, firefly." It's almost May, and yesterday I caught a firefly in my hand. First firefly I've seen in a long, long time. Make a wish, Miss Edna said. Make a good one. Firefly wishes always come true. So a lot of childhood themes there, but also sort of looking at them and saying, I don't feel like I see these as often. I miss them. I wish that there were more of them around. And I think that those feelings are at play when people talk about fireflies more generally. There's also a lot of firefly tourism as a result. This is a powerful economic force down in Tennessee, actually. We don't have a lot of it in Kentucky. People will sometimes travel to see fireflies here, especially from Western states. But most people who are going firefly touristing, they're going to Tennessee. You sometimes have to enter a lottery in order to get seats or the ability to park at certain locations. This is very protected because they want to keep these fireflies around. It's a synchronous emergence. And what that means is it's kind of analogous to a drone show. If you've ever seen those where the drones all fly up all at once, they blink, they make a pattern, and then they can disappear. These fireflies do that as well. Over the course of a few minutes, you have this huge surge in fireflies that are glowing quite quickly, and then they go away. So it happens rapidly, but it's beautiful. It's breathtaking. I've heard it described in many different ways. If you've never had the opportunity to go, I would highly encourage you to try it out if you're interested. But these are some things you can do down in the Smoky Mountain type area. One thing that we do get asked with fireflies is about their disappearance or if they're going extinct. Shad alluded to earlier that there are things that are talked about on Facebook. I've been intrigued because this year a lot of the conversation has actually been about how they're coming back rather than going extinct. I can't verify that as much as I can say that there are declines in fireflies. We have seen their populations seemingly go down in the last several years. We can talk about why here in a moment, but they are not as common as they used to be, just like a lot of other insects. We don't have the strongest data for fireflies. We don't have censuses, for example, from the 40s and 50s and 60s. People were more concerned with different pests at the time. They weren't looking at fireflies as much. We don't have as much data for them as we do like butterflies and moths and things like that. But we know they existed, and anecdotally, there do seem to be fewer of them now. And there are some papers that have been published about this, that there are certain species that are under more strain than others. So, of about 132 species that exist in North America, about 8% could be considered endangered, about 5% could be considered vulnerable, and then about 53 or over half of them, we don't have enough data to understand. So you can see why this is hard to say with certainty. It's something that instead we kind of use anecdotal evidence from people that report to us what they're seeing on their properties or in their state. We do understand that things are in decline across the insect world, but this is one that we don't have the strongest data in order to really prove that. So why would fireflies be under threat? They're just like with everything else, there's multiple kind of overlapping negative things that are happening to them. Habitat destruction is a primary driver. In order to create farmland or to mitigate a lot of mosquito habitats, we have gone through and destroyed sort of swampy, marshy areas or drained them. And that's the kind of habitat that's good for mosquitoes, but it's also really good for fireflies. So as we knock the mosquitoes back, we're also knocking the fireflies back whenever we do this kind of drainage activity. We have fewer places for them to mate and lay their eggs. We also have pesticidal issues. Many people talk about insecticides with them. It is true that some insecticides could harm them, particularly if you were using like a backyard pyrethroid in order to treat for something like mosquitoes or something, and you were spraying all of the vegetation in the backyard, things that they might land on, you could harm them. But one of the big things with fireflies is actually herbicides. Herbicides have wiped out a lot of the kind of weedy areas that they would formerly have hidden in, and also places that they kind of fly and mate in. And so without that kind of habitat and ditches or near fields or in meadows, because we're kind of going through and wiping it out, there are fewer open spaces with the kinds of vegetation that they need. And so they're finding fewer places to fly, flash, and mate. And some of the remaining spaces are next to roads. And that, of course, is going to lead to glowing bug juice on your windshield. As you fly through them and they're trying to mate, you could kill them. It's not the greatest situation for them. The one thing that I think is most interesting with fireflies and kind of unique to them is light pollution. We don't really talk about light pollution with most insect decline because most of them aren't using lights or are affected by lights. Moths can be, if you've ever seen moths trapped by light at night. But fireflies are uniquely harmed by light pollution because they can't see each other as well as they used to. When the world was a darker place at night, we illuminate the world a lot more now so that we can have the warm glow of a city or town, or the security of a light outside on your pole barn to keep intruders away. We are putting these lights out there, and sometimes that light drowns out the ability for them to see each other's glow. And so they can't communicate with each other, and unfortunately, their mating is not facilitated. We can all contribute to firefly conservation. There are some things that we can consider doing to try and help them out. One big thing would be to reduce outdoor lighting, or instead of having something that's continuously on all night, to choose motion activated lighting that is aimed down. So instead of something that glows and illuminates the whole area, if you could have a shield on the light or aim it in such a way that it would point straight down at the animal or person that you would want to be illuminated anyway, rather than something that's orb-like and glowing and illuminating the whole area, that can be helpful for them. You can talk to your local community about turning lights out at certain times of the night, at baseball diamonds and things like that, rather than having them on all night. Anything just to reduce that outdoor lighting. We can transform parts of our lawn or landscaping into habitat they can use. They like a taller grass. So instead of just short mown turf grass, if you could take, a 6 foot by 6 foot area out of production for turf and turn it over to seagrass or something to that effect, whatever would grow down there in your county, something that's adapted to your growing zone so that they can have somewhere to hide in and then also somewhere to kind of buzz around in and mate. They will use the kind of invaded habitats that we have nowadays with invasive species as well. So sometimes we don't have to do anything. It's just about not disturbing the habitat as much. If we reduce applications of herbicides and insecticides near conservation areas, they will survive better. When catching them, please release them. We can enjoy them in the jar for a few minutes, but don't forget about them down in there and set it on a shelf and have them all perish the next morning because they've been trapped in your home all night. You can also join efforts with groups like the Xerces Society, an insect conservation group that has specific programs to help fireflies. I was describing some of the habitat that you could build for fireflies. Some people don't like the look of that. They call it weedy or they call it messy. And sometimes we're able to combat those negative feelings with signage. If you have something that says it's not a mess, it's pollinator habitat. It's not a problem. It's firefly conservation area. That can sometimes make neighbors more understanding because they might like these insects as well. And they'll be more willing to kind of live and let live and have that property change happen on your property. With that, I appreciate Shad inviting me to do this. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
So, any questions? I have personally observed the different ones with the rapid flashes before, and the kind of the dot dot dash, and that was interesting. But probably one of my favorite memories of hiking on the AT was a place down in Tennessee. We were by a pond, and there were so many fireflies, the larvae on the hillside, the glowworms,
Yeah,
that you could see the topography of the hillside
that's amazing.
and I mean think about how many that would take to do that, and it was phenomenal, and I've never forgotten it. So
That's a beautiful memory.
it is. And as a kid, my mom, I had a speech impediment, and she loves to repeat a story of me catching a bunch of lightning bugs in an old Alka-Seltzer jar, and
Okay.
saying that I was going to turn them loose in my womb. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and she loves to tell that, but I was constantly catching lightning bugs. So great thing.
I was always of the thought when I was a kid I was gonna revolutionize light bulbs. I was gonna make bioluminescent light bulbs. I was gonna manufacture luciferin and luciferius when I learned about it. and our world would be green and glowing outside in the park at night rather than the harsh bluish light that we see come off some of these light bulbs. But of course, that's not possible. And here I am instead as a professor.
Oh, that's great. So, anything that would improve wetland habitat, so if it's a homeowner or a landowner that could maybe would pond creation, would that help them, or is it specific to swamps?
No, a pond would help as well. That kind of semi-aquatic area next to streams. We have a lot of stream and creek coverage here in Kentucky. And if your property runs up against that, just conserving that area and not managing it as much and letting some of the taller grasses grow would help them. If you put in a pond and then you grow some of these grasses around it, you'll have to think about things like mosquitoes and ticks, but we can manage for those. And you can still provide habitat for these other insects that we kind of like to have around.
Do we have any synchronized lightning bugs in Kentucky?
Not as far as I'm aware. I've not found any reports of that. I think it's very specific down to Tennessee. They got the lucky draw and got the cool firefly hotspot, but I don't think we have the synchronized ones. I have, like I said, I had one person at a meeting about a year ago that he contacted me on the very down low. Like it was very secretive. He wouldn't give me his full name, if I remember correctly, and he said he had blue fireflies, and I'm supposed to come see them at some point, but it's it's not as common here as it is in other states, but they are real and they're called ghost fireflies, which I think is haunting and interesting imagery.
Yes, very good.
Well, hey, go enjoy them while they're still around. Their season is wrapping up, so there'll be fewer fireflies here in the next couple of days and then in the coming weeks. So I hope people will go and catch one, look at it, and remember some of those fond childhood memories.
We had a rain last night, and I don't think it stirred them up because we had more last night than I've seen at any point so far this spring. So
Wonderful.
they were at peak. But Dr. Larson, thank you very much for providing the talk, as always. And we'll look forward to having you back on again.
Sounds good. I look forward to it.
All right, very good. Well, I will stop the